Combs due back in court for day 2 of jury selection in his sex trafficking and racketeering case. We're getting a look this morning at some of the questions jurors are being asked. Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katursky is right there at the courthouse for us. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. No juror has been seated here so far, and jury selection has made Sean Combs a little bit nervous. This morning, day 2 of jury selection in the racketeering and sex trafficking trial of Sean Combs, seen in court with graying hair. Federal prosecutors are trying to prove Combs used his power, wealth, and fame to force women into drug-fueled orgies he called freak-offs and then threaten them into silence. The jury questionnaire warning potential jurors there may be evidence of sexually explicit videos, photographs, and language. Many prospective jurors said they had heard of the case and this potentially damning evidence. Video first obtained by CNN showing Combs knocking then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura to the floor of a Los Angeles hotel in 2016 and kicking and dragging her. It was upsetting to watch, one woman told the judge, but I don't know the full story, so I can listen to the facts.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life, but sometimes you got to do that. I was fucked up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy, and go into rehab. Had to ask God for His mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Truly sorry.
Things moving. So when the defense asked for a bathroom break, Combs apologized, saying, "Sorry, Your Honor, I'm a little nervous today."
Day 2 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs has delivered more than anyone expected. From jurors being dismissed over blunt admissions to sharp warnings aimed at the defense for inflammatory public remarks, today was intense. This is not just a trial. It's a spectacle, and the courtroom is heating up fast. Let's break down everything that happened, detail by detail. Before we dive into day 2, here's a quick recap. Diddy is facing federal charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and related offenses. Prosecutors allege he orchestrated a decades-long criminal network involving violence, coercion, and the transportation of individuals across state lines for sex-related events known as freak-offs. The stakes couldn't be higher. If convicted, Diddy could spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Day 2 continued jury selection, or voir dire, and things quickly took a sharp turn. Let's start with Juror 48. When asked if she could be impartial, she flat out said no. Her reason: she believed Diddy's wealth would allow him to buy his way out of jail. That statement alone was enough for her to be dismissed immediately. But there's more. She also disclosed she had previously been a victim of an attempted rape, making her a potential juror too emotionally close to the core allegations of the case. Then there was the man who casually admitted that he smokes weed every night. He insisted it wouldn't interfere with his role as a juror, but when pushed, he acknowledged he'd find it hard to stop during an 8-week trial. Result? Dismissed. A young woman claimed she was so sensitive to sexual topics that she fainted in junior high during a health class presentation. She visibly trembled in court and told the judge she might faint again, just listening to the evidence. Another dismissal. By the end of Tuesday, the court had narrowed down 35 qualified jurors. The goal? Get to 45 by Wednesday, enough to select a 12-member jury plus alternates. Inside the courtroom, Diddy remained silent but visibly engaged. He stood each time new jurors entered, pacing at times and biting his lip while listening to questions. At other times, he leaned back in his chair and stretched, subtle signs of tension for a man known for control and power. He made eye contact with several jurors, but never spoke. His attorneys did the talking. Still, it was clear he was deeply focused, and likely nervous. Outside the courtroom, things got even messier. One of Diddy's lawyers, celebrity attorney Mark Garagos, stirred a firestorm with his podcast comments. Referring to the federal prosecution team, he called them, and I quote, a six-pack of white women. That phrase exploded online and in the media. But the courtroom is not a podcast, and Judge R.N. Subramanian was not amused. He blasted the comments as outrageous and warned that such statements risk contaminating the jury pool. Prosecutors accused Geragos of trying to inject racial bias into the case without permission from the court. Geragos pushed back, claiming his comments were taken out of context and meant to highlight bias against Diddy. But here's the kicker. Just a day earlier, the defense had agreed not to bring race into the arguments. This controversy might seem like a sideshow, but it could impact the trial. The judge made it clear. Any attempt to influence public opinion, especially through the media, could lead to sanctions. As part of the jury screening process, lawyers presented a list of nearly 200 celebrity names. Why? To root out potential biases. People who might be influenced by media connections, past interviews, or friendships. One of the most important names on that list was Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend and one of the most prominent figures in the accusations.
Show, and a very good afternoon to you. So Combs has been held in jail since September 16th, and despite repeated attempts at bail, he's been detained for the last 7 months or so, awaiting trial. And in many ways, this does speak to just the seriousness of the charges he'll be facing this trial. I mean, just remind us of the extent to what he's up against here.
Super serious charges here, Unati. I'll get to those 5 charges in just a moment, but 2 anecdotes as we get started here. First of all, Sean Diddy Combs' appearance, right? This is a 55-year-old former music mogul, one of the most powerful figures in entertainment in the United States, arriving at that Manhattan lower federal court yesterday. And we are told it surprised a lot of people by his appearance. Very grey, we are told. The sketch artist interpretation you see over my right shoulder is the only visual representation we will get because, of course, no television cameras, no electronic media allowed in federal court in the United States. So we'll be dependent on the sketch artist's interpretation of the visual dynamic that is laid out itself in federal court. And then also comments made to the judge by Sean Diddy Combs yesterday saying, quote, Your Honor, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm very nervous today. And I think that does speak to those 5 charges, Unati. 2 counts of sex trafficking, 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, and 1 count of racketeering. The racketeering charge carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. The sex trafficking charge also could result in life in prison with a mandatory minimum of 15 years for each count. Then, of course, the transportation charge also has a maximum of 10 years. So essentially, he could face life in prison were he to be convicted on 1 or on all of the charges. It'll be up to the judge to determine whether those sentences, if of course convicted, will run concurrently. Racketeering, of course, is a concept that a lot of people might not understand. It refers to a type of criminal activity that involves multiple illegal acts committed as part of a pattern that includes things like money laundering, Unati, extortion, fraud, and embezzlement. The indictment from the prosecutor says Combs was able to engage in a decades-long pattern of abusive behavior, particularly against women, in drug-fueled sex partnerships, including with male sex workers, in sessions they refer to as, quote, freak-offs, right? I'm sure you've read about these.
We're only on day 1 of what's expected to be a long trial, and around 90 minutes in to the jury selection process, Diddy asked for a bathroom break. The judge said, "Are you sure you need one?" And Diddy raised up his hand a little bit and said, "Your Honor, I'm feeling a little bit nervous right now." So that's a glimpse into the mindset of someone who's on trial for federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could send him to prison for life. Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Michael B. Jordan. Those names were on a list of possible people whose names might come up at some point during what's expected to be an action-packed 2-month trial.
Now, sources say Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, will be a central witness during the trial. Now, sources also tell CNN other witnesses expected to testify include his former sexual partners, a business associate, and a male sex worker. Can you just put into perspective how significant this case is?
This is a very, very significant case. I like to akin this is the Gen Z's I guess, version of the O.J. Simpson trial.
Wow.
I was in 5th grade whenever the O.J. verdict came out, and I remember my teacher stopping trial, or stopping the court, stopping our courtroom just for us to figure out like what's going on. We got to figure out what's happening with this verdict. What's different in this particular case than the O.J. Simpson trial is that this is not going to be live streamed.
Yeah.
You know, in federal court, you can't live stream any type of court at all. You can't live stream any trials. And so your audience is really going to have to focus on how CNN is kind of letting them know how the trial is progressing. But it's extremely significant. Yeah.
Gina, good morning to you. And I can tell you this, it's expected to be another busy day at court. As a reminder, yesterday, potential jurors were given a brief explanation of the charges. The judge also told them that the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That defendant, of course, Sean Diddy Combs, walked into the courtroom yesterday wearing a sweater over a white-collared shirt and gray slacks. He hugged his attorneys when he got in. As proceedings got underway, Judge Arun Subramanian jokingly compared the long list of the prospective jurors to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Several of them said they already saw a key piece of evidence in this case, video of Combs beating R&B singer and ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura inside a Los Angeles hotel. One woman was dismissed after describing a still image she saw from that video as, quote, damning evidence.
So, what's next? The court plans to finalize jury selection by midweek. Opening statements are expected to begin Thursday or Friday. From there, the trial will enter its most dramatic phase, witness testimony. Prosecutors have hinted at calling multiple accusers to the stand, many of whom have previously remained anonymous.
Would you start us off? Who do you think might be a great juror from the government's perspective?
Oh, gosh, Julie, that's a hard question because it's going to be almost impossible to find a biased, or I'm sorry, impartial juror who does not know Puff Daddy, Diddy, Sean, whatever you want to call him. I'm thinking someone that is not going to be easily weirded out by some of the context of the materials that's going to be given to them as evidence. Someone that is okay with looking at really, really, I would have to just say, disgusting evidence across the board. Someone that maybe doesn't care for his music. It's really going to be hard to get 12 jurors that do not know who he is and doesn't have an opinion, given this is such a huge trial.
I mean, do you think they can select a jury this week with opening statements next week? When you told me this, when they told me that jury selection was only going to take a week, I said, no way, it's not going to be able to take a week. But you think it's possible, generally speaking? We'll get into more specifics about what happened today.
Jesse, first of all, love being on, and we're almost there. You know, next week, I do believe we are going to get a jury selected this week. And I think the reason we are, really there's two reasons. One, we're in federal court, and we know these federal judges like to move. They're really limited when it comes to what they perceive as for-cause challenges. If some of these potential jurors say, hey, I can be fair and impartial, that's good enough for most judges. And they'll say, you know what, counsel, you got to use your peremptory on them. The other reason I think we're moving quickly is because we're having judge voir dire as opposed to attorney voir dire. Attorneys can ask all sorts of questions because, look, let's be honest, Jesse, there's only one person in that courtroom that wants a fair and impartial jury, and that's Judge Subramanian. The lawyers, they're going to want jurors who are favorable for their case. I mean, that they're advocates. That's just the reality of it. So lawyers tend to be a little bit more
What did you say? What? They don't want fair and impartial? They want jurors on their side? Nima, what are you talking about?
Believe it or not, Jesse, advocates actually want to win. So, you know, they'll ask questions, as you know, trying to get into their political beliefs. And really, we want to know, if you're prosecuting or defending a sexual assault case, what are your views on sexual assault? Do you believe it